Welcome back. Thank you again for coming tonight.
Okay.
It's a great group of people here. I can tell you they're a great group of people because I've interviewed them all many times. And they answer questions intelligently 98.5% of the time. All right. So first question, ice is going out when? July, August, or September? All right, real first question. We'll start with Jason. We'll work our way down to the end. Quick introduction of who you are and how you got started in this crazy business.
My name's Jason Durham. I'm a local fishing guide, going into my 27th year of fishing. I started when I was 15, and I'm 42 now, so that's over half my life. I'm also really poor at math. So I'm also a kindergarten teacher. I've got a master's in education and teaching in the metropolis of Nevis, Minnesota, my hometown, and 2 blocks from my childhood home. And how did I get into this crazy sport? A lifetime of angling, a lot of great mentors, including those that are sitting with me at this table, and a lot of those who are in the crowd too, including my dad who's here tonight, and just a lot of wonderful, giving people.
I'm Chip Lear. Hi again. I introduced the fishing from a couple of uncles. My dad was a terrible fisherman, but I had a couple of uncles that knew how to catch fish up around Cass Lake in Bemidji, and they were kind enough to take me out and kind of got under my skin and couldn't leave.
My name is Paul Nelson. I write for this is my helper Chip here. I write for the Bemidji Pioneer. It's in Sunday's edition now. Fishing column for there. I've been guiding for this will be year 37. I've been coming up to the Bemidji area, which is where I'm living now since I was a kid. My grandparents had a cabin on a little lake connected in between Plantagenet and Lake Bemidji. And that was the highlight of my summer, to come up there and fish, and I'd get up real early so I could go out and boat by myself first, but I'd have to be in time or I'd get in trouble. But I just enjoy fishing. I run a guide service with Bro and fished a lot of the lakes up here, and couldn't find a better place in the summer to live. Winters, I'm not so sure.
Jason Freed with Leisure Outdoor Adventures Guide Service, and this will be 10th year now as fishing guide and educator as well, like Jason. He has one end of the spectrum, and I've got the other end, so I've got high schoolers, so big difference. But no, I enjoyed being a high school social studies teacher and a football coach in the fall as well. And I guess what got me into it was just as a kid, we used to, I grew up in northwest Iowa and fished Iowa Great Lakes, but as a kid we used to go to Lake Vermilion over in the northeastern part of Minnesota for 15 straight years. And now we actually take my daughters there every summer, but it was always having the opportunity to hop on the 16-foot lawn with 25 horse, and my dad telling me just go figure it out. And from there, it's been going out with some fishing guides, and obviously getting to meet other people in the business. It fostered and grew, and is now a passion in my life. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Hi, I'm Brian Brosdahl. My friends call me Bro. And I got started, my father took me fishing at a young age. 5 years old, got my first walleye in Lake of the Woods, and I was hooked. They were farm laborers from the northwest part of Minnesota. And in all these years, I can say I've met a lot of really cool people in fishing. And not all of them are pros, just every walk of life. And I have too many memories to share. But one of the guys who gave me my break was Dwayne Peterson in this room, and I want to thank him. Thanks, Dwayne. But I've been a professional fisherman for over 25 years, making my entire living off of fishing. And that's including what he introduced me to, the guiding, and there's something special about fishing. And I've said it, my sister-in-law said I was an old man as a kid. She said, you said the strangest things, and one of the quotes she said was, I remember telling her I fish to be in extraordinary places, but it's also to meet extraordinary people, like the gentleman next to me.
Well, we're all waiting for the ice to go out as we talked about spring fishing, and everybody wants to catch walleyes on the first weekend. Throw it out to, well, we'll start with Paul in the middle on this one. What should we be doing opening weekend, and does it matter when the ice goes out or not?
It's hard to beat a jig and minnow, you know, and even more specifically a spot-tail shiner. They come in to spawn, and the walleyes will stay in there and feed on those shiner minnows until they leave the shallows, and then they kind of follow out into the lake, and you know, insects are kind of the next thing they do. But if you've got a jig and minnow, start at the outside edge of the weed line. You can also do rocks, covers at a minimum that time of year, so you're really just, you know, looking in proximity to the spawning areas. The walleyes will spawn up rivers or on shoals or rocky areas in a lake, so you're just kind of, you know, I think Chip said that really well, where if you're coming, if you know where the fish are heading to and where they're coming from, they're going to be somewhere in between there. So really, you're just starting close to the spawning areas and then looking at, you know, the first thing you do, it's like you went to see a movie, and if there's a good place to eat right out, you know, right next door, that'll fill up quick. If not, then they'll disperse. You know, so in a small lake, they'll go to mid-lake stuff right off the bat. In a big lake, they'll stay on the shoreline for, you know, what'll probably be weeks. And shallow fish are moving fish, they're active fish. They're here today and gone tomorrow because they're following the bait fish. Where you get mid-lake structure fish, they're usually on a spot, and they don't usually leave that spot, they move around the spot. But once they're on it, they're there for a little while. So, you know, you're just looking for shoreline active fish, move really quick, use a jig and minnow. I like to get away from the boat rather than right in the shadow of the boat. I like casting better early in the year so that I'm not in the shadow right underneath the boat. You know, in the clearer water that we get with these lakes with some of the invasive species, that becomes more critical to get out and away from the boat. But jig and minnow, shallow water, keep moving until you find them.
Anybody else want to throw in something?
I fish on beach quite a bit, as well as Chip, and you know, you fish the wind. That's a really big thing. And you know, as we're leading up to opener, I like to pay attention to what the forecast is doing in the wind. And if you get so many days in a row of a southeast wind, you know, those fish are going to start congregating in those parts of the lake, and it can really take a big lake like a Leech or any of those places and make 110,000 acres become much smaller, more fishable. So, but I would just ditto what Paul said about jigging a minnow and get it all away from the boat, and don't be afraid to go fast.
Around here, jigging a minnow works really well, but one thing that people oftentimes overlook is a night crawler from opening day. And a lot of people say, well, you can't fish a night crawler until July. But trust me, they catch fish, and like you say, getting it away from the boat. But in those shallow water situations too, a lot of people have some misconception about their boat electronics. They'll think that they're going to run over those fish and see them. And on guide trips, I have this happen all the time, where people say, do you see anything on your radar? Well, first of all, it's a sonar. It's not a radar. There's a difference. Or a fish finder. It's not. It's really for locating depth and structure, water temperature at certain times. But if you're in, let's say, 6 feet of water, you're only seeing an area about 1/3 as wide as the depth that you're in. It depends on the cone angle of your transducer. But in most situations, in 6 feet of water, you're seeing a 2-foot area. That has to literally be right under your boat. So don't pay as much attention to finding fish with your sonar, but finding the right depth and the right structure.
Bro, you can be specific, you can be general.
Well, let's just say after last year, what I seen on Red Lake, I'm going to Red. And if I don't go there, I'm going to fish with Paul so he can drive by bait shop on the way, and then I can just have him pick the spot. But no, really, almost every lake there is has a historical place where the fish bite, and this is why I want to visit bait shops. But I also recommend hiring a guide. It's a good way to get to know lakes and bodies of water, and there's plenty of us here.
If you know any good guides, bro?
What's that?
Any guides that you would recommend? Any good
Yeah,
guides?
well, you know, from this side of the table that way, maybe.
You can be specific, you can be general. What are we looking for in an opening weekend lake? Yeah, I mean, is there a certain type? You could be if you want to name a lake, that'd be great. If you want to name what we should be looking for in a lake.
I'm just gonna go out there and throw it out for everybody. I mean, we're all picking the same kind of water, which is shallow water that warms quicker, shallow bodies of water, shallow lakes that have good walleye populations. If the water gets warm quicker, the activity level that those fish are gonna get through spawn faster, they're gonna get active quicker. So that's why leech and red and all of our lakes around this area do really well, because we don't have a lot of what I consider super deep. But if you are on leech, you're out in the, you're not in Walker Bay where it's 140 feet. You're up in Sucker Bay where it maxes out at 30 feet, or something. Even a shallow bay like Trappers or Traders, which is only like 20 feet. So it's somewhere. The big, and I'll concentrate on that too. You guys can take it wherever you want with this, but look at a big lake breaks up into a whole bunch of little lakes when you look at all the bays, and it fishes different from bay to bay to bay.
Well, that makes sense, and that's where I'll take it from there. There's a shallow to deep water bite, and that's how I pick my lakes. I mean, if you want me just to go to one lake, no matter what, ain't gonna happen. I'm the traveling man, if I can be. I'd like to stay in the shallow areas to start. Shallow lakes, but there's some deep lakes in our neck of the woods that you could go to a couple weeks after opener. It's like repeating the opener. So it's the temperature game. You follow the temperature, and there's an opener day for a week or 2 weeks.
I think a lot of times too, when you're fishing a chain of lakes, the fish usually have the deepest lake in the chain is their home lake, but if they're a river spawning fish, they'll go up the chain and the males will work their way back through the chain. And the males tend to feed their way back, where the females, they get a little more of an attitude, and they may bite, but they're kind of headed back to the home lake. They want to go into some deeper water until they've recovered. I mean, they've lost a lot of body weight, so it's a little more trauma for the females than the males. But you're basically looking for males, and again, you're going, okay, they spawned in these areas. Well, they'll follow the shoreline, one shoreline or the other. They're not going to swim down the middle. And every time there's a big food shelf or an area that goes further out from shore, those are areas where they're going to stop and feed, and then they'll continue on. A lot of times the anglers will conjugate at the inlets and outlets, but a lot of times if those are real shallow, those fish want to run those at night because they just don't like being exposed like that, so they'll do it in the dark so stuff can't see them swimming through as well. So they'll stack up at the inlets and then blow through at night. So again, you're just following those fish back to the home lakes. You're targeting more male walleyes. You're going by water temperature, the warmest water. If you're in a chain of lakes, you're up the chain to the warmer lakes, working your way back to the cold lake in the chain, or the biggest lake in the chain, where most of them, there's a resident population in every lake, but the majority of the fish will head to the lake that's got the most deep water, or a lake like Leech, they'll start way up in the bays, work their way down the bays, and then go to the main lake. So it's a transition, and you just got to figure out how far along they are, and be predictable on the areas that you're fishing. Again, you need to fish the wind, and that's an example for almost any lake, except a stained lake like Red Lake. Then you don't want the wind, because the stained water gives them the same cover that the wind is giving them. So we got a lot of choices up here. I mean, if you transposed some of our lakes down by the cities, it'd be everybody's favorite lake. And up here, we've got so many choices, that you drive this way or that way, or, if you live in Park Rapids, you got a handful of lakes, Bemidji, Grand Rapids, Walker. I mean, we're really blessed to have a lot of good areas to fish here. So you have a lot of choices, and it teaches you a lot as an angler not to do the same thing in the same spot on the same lake, blah, 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 like that, and catch them good one, a couple times a year, and the rest of the year you're floundering. It teaches you stuff to fish new lakes too, so it's good for the brain. So, just start out at the warmest lakes, small lakes, further up the chain on good lakes that lead into one of the classic lakes like Cass, Leech, Bemidji, all those lakes. The smaller lakes around are usually good early, but it goes by water temp.
So if you were going to hire a guy, what part of the table would you start at?
I was just going to add, one of the great, Chip is such a comedian. My gosh, I've known him for a long time. You can't be around him and not laugh. One thing I was going to add that's wonderful about the spring walleye bite is that you don't need a boat. you can fish right off of the shoreline, you can put on a pair of waders. There's a lot of opportunity, and some of the best opportunity of the entire season next to fall, where you can literally fish off the shoreline and you don't need to bring a boat along. So take advantage of it.
I can attest to that because growing up I didn't have a boat, and that's what I did. I put on waders and I grabbed my casting rod and a crankbait and cast early this night and caught just as many walleyes. It seemed like doing that. So one other thing I think Paul kind of mentioned is if you can find current, anywhere there's current, you're going to find walleyes in the spring as well. And that's sometimes people forget about that. But even on little lakes where just it could be a narrows, like in Walker, in one leach where the narrows comes down and goes out of the main lake. It's a well-known area, and down on the southeast corner of the lake, there's pinch areas where the current comes through, and that's oftentimes the areas that's going to attract walleyes early in the season.
We'll start with you, Jason. What, in your mind, is really important about valuing AIS?
Well, I mean, it's like anything. It's about, we talk about conservation of fish. I mean, and that's important, but it's the big picture to me. And if we want to conserve our fisheries and the fish within them, we have to also look at the fishery and the water itself and battle this. And I think, like Chip said, it's not too late. I've heard that from too many people say it's too late and it's just a matter of time. And I don't believe in that. I don't buy that. And I think that if we really care about our fisheries, and we have all these lakes that we have in Minnesota, if we care about our fisheries and what we want our kids to have and our grandkids to have and their kids and such, we want to make sure we continue to do that. And it's just a matter of just being meticulous and taking care of your boat and your docks and everything. And I'm one of those people who I'm kind of OCD, and I wash my boat every week. And I make sure things are clean, and I'm always inspecting things, and I always want to make sure people are doing the same thing. And so I'm always super pleasant and respectful of those people at the Access because they're just doing their job, and because they ultimately want what's best for all of us, which is healthy lakes. And so I just think we all do our due diligence with our homes and our cars and everything else, but if we can do our due diligence with our lakes, we're going to continue to have great lakes for the rest of our lives.
Anybody else want to throw in anything on that?
Well, I believe that one of the best things to have is a place that you can go clean. I got a lot on Cass Lake, and the DNR, or the boat cleaners are there, and when they see me, they know I'm coming through there. And my boat looks great when they're done with it. It just takes all the calcium off it better than the hot water I go at home. I have my own spray station I set up at home. When I get home, I have hot water hooked up to a pressure sprayer, and we're like a pit crew and we go through it. But the best thing is having access to that. And I heard a rumor of maybe having water at the accesses so people can clean them. Because intention is there. And we want to battle it, but we don't want to battle down the numbers of licenses in Minnesota. So we got to attract them with honey and not with something bitter. And I think having a place to wash your boat is the biggest victory we can have. That defeats a lot of problems right there. Because people don't want to spread it, but a lot of the people, it's a busy world out there, so make it easier for them. And a lot of places to clean your boat aren't boat friendly. Try backing into some of the places that we have to back in to clean our boats. It's not easy. So I think you can't do it at every access, but in other states, they have cleaning stations for people, just the public, to go clean fish. Not just in like Walker, everywhere. I think with this new group that's coming up that Chip told us about, we could have wash stations centered where everybody can get at it. And I think that's an important thing.
One thing nice about Hubbard County and the Park Rapids area, Hubbard County does more boat inspections than any county in the state of Minnesota. We're really being proactive on this. At the same time, lakes are becoming infested right around us, and we need to be the ones that are in charge of being diligent. It's really frustrating to me when I talk to the boat inspectors. I talk to them every day of the summer, and to hear them say, and I always ask, have you run into any jerks? And they always have a story about somebody that got upset because they feel like it's government trying to limit what they have access to, and it's not. It's not about that at all. It's about protecting our resource. The other thing we're fortunate about in Park Rapids, we do have a washdown station that's free. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's down at the detail center by the landfill. And all you have to do is call to make an appointment, you pull in there. You know what it costs me to wash my boat when I go to the car wash? $16. Because I have to spend that amount of time, and it's a pretty good size boat. You go down to the washdown station, it's free. You just save $16.
Too far for me to drive.
Well, I'm just gonna bring up the whole behavior change. I mean, the one thing that I do now that I never used to do before I was made aware of aquatic invasive species in our system is we all clean it, as guys, you clean your boat, you do it religiously, because you got a new group of people getting in your boat tomorrow, you gotta clean it out. And I've always been a clean boat guy. But the one thing I do now is that I flush my boat out, which I never used to do before. So when I get home, if I'm just, especially if I know that I'm going from one lake to another lake, but I flush my boat literally every single day, meaning I take bleach water and I pour it through my live wells and I put it in my bilge and I flush out the entire boat and try to get even through the, I'll put the plug in the back of the live well, pour a couple buckets of bleach water in there, I hit the pump, it circulates around, pull the plug, spray water through it, and the whole thing goes on. What I didn't realize is how much I hated the smell of fish in my live well. Because once you start doing this, you realize that every day you're going to get up tomorrow and it's not going to reek inside there, or you're not going to forget about the minnows inside there. That's important. That's important stuff. But all that is behavior. It's just behavior, and I think that's what. If we get anywhere against this fight, it's just a little, doing something a little different than we didn't used to do 10 years ago.
I really agree with that too. It's fishermen retraining themselves and getting new habits and breaking old ones, and just getting a routine and sticking with it. If you have to buy a few things, one thing would be, like Rose mentioned, a pressure washer. Hot's better, bleach is better, but just spraying them physically out and letting them dry will also do the job. Minnow buckets. Buy an aerated minnow bucket and don't add lake water anymore. Have some water in a cooler when you get back to the access so that you can freshen that water up, because some of the AIS people are going to have you dump out your bait if you don't have new water. So, if you've got cold water in a cooler, then you could just flip them over. Another aerated bait well in there, so you could just flip them over and it's ready to do. You just have to change your behavior, get a new routine, and nobody wants to be the typhoid Mary of being responsible for spreading it to another lake. And this is who spreads AIS right here, is anglers and people. It's not a bird carrying it on their legs, or and little villager things that swim around. They can't swim upstream very well. They can get washed downstream, but most of the time they're being carried to the new place by anglers. So we're all responsible, and if one of us slips up and does it, it can be enough to introduce them to a new lake. So, it's serious stuff.
Throw it out to anybody. Anybody have a question? Yeah, right there. We have incentives. Anybody have a question?
The incentives are a brand new jig, the long shank fireball jig, which works perfect for spot tail shiners in the spring to catch walleye. So we brought some that are just now hitting retail stores. You don't have any of these in your tackle box, but you need them. Kev's got free ones for everybody who's got a question.
You just got to ask the question, right?
You put it back. Okay?
Lawrence or Hummingbird?
Lawrence or Hummingbird?
Hummingbird. Lawrence.
Okay, let's.
Garmin's pretty good too.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll answer it this way. Whatever electronics you decide to use, learn how to use it, and don't switch. Taking the time to understand it is more important than the brain.
Absolutely.
Although I will say with Lawrence's now, that next fall, you could be out on the water fishing and watching the Vikings at the same time.
Now, how does football affect your jig stroke?
It gets slow sometimes.
I don't have time to watch TV.
Battle of the
I'm
endorsements.
watching the fish because I can see them.
You had your hand
How has side view imaging changed your fishing styles?
up. Side view imaging, how's it changed
Speak to
things?
that.
Yeah, bro never uses it. No.
I would, Chip's point about learning your electronics is key because they're basically computers now. But learning what things look like. And so my advice always is when you get a new graph is go to a part of the lake where you know there's rocks and you know there's weeds, and start learning what those things look like. But side scan or side imaging or whatever everybody calls it, because every brand's got something that they call different, is truly a game changer because, well, you can tie it into invasive species because as the water gets clearer in some of these lakes, your fish get spookier and they're less likely to be closer to the boat. And so, especially like lakes like Leech and some of these lakes where you got these big shallow areas where fish can be spooky, using your side scan or side imaging is huge, and you can find fish and pinpoint them. And I do it all the time on Leech. I mean, in the middle of July, we're fishing 6 to 8 feet of water and driving around and marking fish 50 feet from the boat and telling people, throw your jig over there. And there they are. And so it's truly a tool that's really changed the game. And if you can learn what it looks like and everything, and I don't only use it for just finding fish, but finding weed edges and weed lines and rocks and stuff. So it really tells the story of the lake.
Anybody else have any thoughts on it?
You can count every crappie with the hummingbird. the difference is the hummingbird invented it. Just remember that. So, but all electronics are good. But with a hummingbird, you can run your front trolling motor. I can run the whole system off my face of my hummingbird. You can Bluetooth it. You can do all this stuff. But you can run and you can deploy your motor. You don't have to go up there. If you forget your remote at home, you don't need it. You can use your screen. But visually, in the last 4 years, has gotten so good that we've opened Pandora's box. We can't close it because people aren't going to forget how good those images are. They're going to want to see where the fish are. And once you use it, it's amazing. And I do have friends that have a Lowrance and a hummingbird side by side, and talk to me on the side about that.
Bro is going to need a copy of that for his hummingbird video.
Can somebody sit in between us now?
Yes, sir.
What do you think of barbless in Minnesota?
Barbless in Minnesota.
Keep your line tight.
Yeah, would you be for or against it?
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, anyways, fish Manitoba, I mean, this fish is barbless. I'm all in. I'm not fishing. My dinner does not depend whether I bring fish home or not.
Those little barbs are tremendously effective. As a fishing guide, I watch so many different ways to lose a fish. That'd be another one. I don't want to have to keep saying the same thing to them. Keep the line tight, keep the line tight, keep the line. You lost it because you didn't keep the line tight. Pretty soon they're going to go with bro instead of me. So they're tremendously effective. The only time I wish I didn't have a barb on the hook, I guess, is when somebody hooks it. So, other than that, I mean, I understand it. It's less harmful on the fish, but man, it's really a challenge to catch a fish without a barb. They work really well.
Yes.
Minn Kota trolling or motor guide, the spot lock and the durability, the blowing motherboards, all that kind of stuff. Any experience?
I've had good luck with Minn Kota. And the spot lock, it'll hold you there until you want to move. If you're in a changeable wind where it's blowing from a lot of different directions, you get that, like an otter tail point. Doesn't matter what direction the wind's coming, if it's coming offshore, it kind of throws it around and you feel like you're in a, but that's the only time spot lock has to be redone. I've heard motor guide's good, but I don't know that a lot of people, Minn Kota's got the lion's share of the market. And in motherboards, I've had one go many years ago. That was on an older unit and that was a different time. I haven't had any go in the modern units. And if you haven't been in a boat with an old Terra that has spot lock, and all jog features. So once you're locked, you can move in 5-foot increments around the spot. And you can memorize it, it'll hold it to you. You can go to it from another place. You control. It has cruise control, so if you're in waves, it'll slow you down at the bottom of the wave and speed you up at the top to keep you and maintain a trolling speed. But if somebody here's got something better than that, tell me.
Yes, sir. Does anybody else want to comment on that, or?
I ran them both, but I honestly will run them in Coda still, and that's my preference.
Yeah, that's my boy.
But one other feature in terms of anchoring is the use of a Talon or any shallow water anchors, because I've started using those the last 2 years now, and I know you've got them on your boat, and those are game changers as well.
Yes.
With our clear water that we have in our lakes, how many of you use planer boards to get your bait off to the side?
Planer boards is the question. Okay.
We do some, like on beach and such, use them with crankbaits, but actually last year I started messing around and using them. This is something as you watch the professional walleye guys, a lot of guys, those guys troll planer boards and spinners. And especially during bug hatches, and those fish, leech especially, when you see these bug hatches, the perch are up in them eating, and the walleyes are going to be there too. And so it's a really great way to cover ground, and like you said, get your baits out away from the boat. And so whether it's spinners or crankbaits, they're both super effective.
And I think that as you're starting to see water get clearer, especially with zebra mussels and a lot of bodies of water, but the clearer the water, the more important it is to get off the side, the more important it is to use the planer boards. We don't see a lot in Minnesota because we're a one-line state. Most other states allow multiple fishing lines, and planer boards are utilized from 5 feet to 50 feet of water, anywhere in between.
And you don't see them, I brought one here tonight, and we were wondering if anybody would ask about it. Thank you for asking about it. Planer boards are not to Minnesota like they are everywhere else. If you go outside of state, when I was in the FLW Walleye Tour, I didn't use planer boards. I used a little bit, but you go out there and they look at you, you don't use planer boards? And so you have to learn them, but I showed kids in my boat how to troll with a planer board. They go, how much line do you put out? I said, there's a book, put a split shot in the spinner, pitch it out there. How much is that? It's about yay. That's how we measure it. Now put the board on, and you don't just freewheel it. You let it out slow, because it maintains the spinner above the weeds. And on Winnie or leech, across the weed beds, the weeds that don't quite get to the surface, you go across the top, or the rocks out on Leech Lake. In these lakes around here with those cabbage beds, you don't have to have a big, long structure to do it. If you troll across it, you have to turn around. You're not on it very much, and you come back through, you'll get a lot of fish. And I showed this kid on his Snoopy rod, it's bent like this. Now watch the planer board, and you can see the flag go down. That's a perch, don't worry. But when it went back, I'm like, there's your walleye, and there's your pike, and even the perch. And you can use it, but it's a time and a place thing, like a jig or a spinner, or trolling crankbaits.
Anybody else?
Favorite rod lengths for walleyes?
What was that?
Favorite rod lengths for walleyes?
Favorite rod lengths for walleyes?
I prefer a longer rod, actually, for most situations. I mean, jigging, it's nice to be able to keep your bait closer to the edge of the boat, but it's just it's simple physics. You can put so much more into a hook set when you've got a longer rod. Casts are further. It just makes a lot more sense. Honestly, my favorite, 7.5.
Yeah, I'm with Jason, doing a very similar type of mentality. If you think about ice fishing and think about vertical, it's probably the shortest rod you use in the year. The more you go horizontal, the further you get away from the boat, the longer the rod is that I prefer. And that's trolling or casting.
I guess my favorite jigging rods is 6.3. You can go a little shorter than that. And a live bait rod, 6.10 or 7 feet. Generally just I want a little longer rod for live bait rigging than I do for casting jigs. But you can cast a light jig. If I'm crappie fishing and I'm using a super light jig, then actually you want a little more rod length, just because it helps you fire that line of jig out there. So I mean, there's there's lots of different situations, and there's kind of multi-use for, some rods will work for several things, so it just depends on how many rods you got in the boat. I mean, all of us here got more rods than we can fit in the boat.
Yeah, but I think we'd probably all agree that, how many rods are enough, and we'd all say one more.
Yeah, exactly. One more and that's it.
For me, it's probably a 6.6 when it comes to jigging, and then as I get into rigging, I get up to more like 7.6, but anywhere in between. That's the thing with walleyes, you can use a rod for sometimes multiple applications.
And then also take into consideration wind. On a windy day, I had a tournament on Leech Lake and I won a nice sum of cash using a 5.9 on a real finesse bite and fishing and pitching really close to the boat. And the fish were, you had to feel them and let them take it just another bite and set the hook. A 5.9 rod that's extra fast is really a nice rod in the wind. And then if you're going to be ripping puppet minnows or jigging wraps, a 6/8 to 7 footer is nice. So you have that, so you can flip it. And not necessarily do you need a broomstick, because you'll zipper lift the walleye. You'll hook them and rip whatever you hooked right off. So there's a span of rods, but importantly, I will never fish without a 5.9 because I won so much money on that 5.9 rod in a lot of situations. And then 6.3 is the tried and true for if you're using a little heavier jig, and 6.8 for lighter, 6/8 to 7 footer. But if you get too long of a fishing pole, and I see people fishing with them in the wind and they're missing bites all the time, so you got to scale back. And there's a reason for every action.
One more.
This is our first year of doing this Park Rapids Lakes Area Fishing Expo. And what do you think, what kind of a job have we done? How could we improve it? What do you think about what we're doing?
Well, when there's a line out the door, I think you're doing a pretty darn good job.
I'm sure you all agree the panel is fabulous.
Dan, maybe next year you could have less snow for us?
Well, you got a Hall of Famer on the panel, you got a Hall of Famer in the audience, and then you got a full room, and everybody, I don't see anybody sleeping out there, which is awesome.
A couple yawns.
And well, but, as long as it's not when I'm up. That's good. And I love I like a little bit of opposition up here because that's what makes everything great. Because tournaments from day to day they get handed off to different techniques and different people, and it never surprised me. You never underestimate the next angler.
I want to go back to AIS for a second here. Give us some real-world examples you've encountered of the change in fishing, whether it be quality or the way the fish are behaving due to AIS in your fishing experience.
I can speak to that. Like living in Brainerd, Gull Lake is a rather, it's a renowned lake in the state of Minnesota, and the conditions in Gull Lake have changed. Well, as Pelican Lake, and a lot of those lakes in the area have zebra mussels in them. And as a fishing guide, you talk with other fishing guides, and one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got was don't ever fish memories. Well, a lot of fishing guides down in Brainerd, that area, they got so used to being able to pull a lindy rig along the weed lines for many, many years. They caught a lot of walleyes, and then when zebra mussels got into Gull Lake, the fishery changed. And so as I learned and have been there and lived there, is that because of AIS, because of zebra mussels, the anglers have had to adapt, and now they're finding, instead of finding walleyes on the weed edges all summer long, being able to pull a lindy rig and a red tail, now they're having to fish and adapt and fish in the weeds, on the inside weed lines, in pockets of weeds, and because those fish are in the weeds more, because that's where the bait is. And so that's a really good example of a lake where the weed line used to be probably, 15 to 18 feet on Gull, and now it's out to 30, 32. And the weeds, when you're talking about the weed line, it's not just strands of weeds, it's thick weeds, and so anglers have had to adapt their techniques and where they fish on that lake, as well as the other lakes in that area.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
That's absolutely the fact, because a lot of the lakes that have zebra mussels now, in the past, people could control real tight to a weed line and just have a leech out and a light rig or a bullet sinker, most fish are gone, they're not there. So, you know, as I'm seeing, I'm actually seeing less guides on the lakes that I guide on, because they've had so many bloody noses and tough days. And I treat it like bass. If you treat it like you're fishing for bass, now, the guy who likes to catch either walleyes probably don't like bass fishing, and they're just in his way when he wants to get his meal. But if you think that if you'll bass fish to catch walleyes, and it's not that much harder. You just might have to cast or stand up, or, you know, not always stand up, but keep your line away from the boat. And the thing about zebra mussels is in the spring you can see your fish. So I'm using my eyes more than my electronics a lot of the time. And you can see them, but if they see you, they're already spooked. So it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game. It's like hunting a big buck, and or a bunch of deer, you know. And so it's bass fishing throughout the summer more than anything else, because I see you're standing up and pitching, a lot of pitching. But it doesn't mean it has to be an active sport. You could slip bobber fish, and it works really well. Or drag a slip bobber. As the boat moves through, they come back. So I don't think it's the end. It's just as many fish, just differently.
I think the one thing that we're seeing here is we're seeing in a lot of places across North America is just plain clearer, cleaner water. It's not all invasive species either. I think we're to be commended on taking care of our sources. We're no longer dumping septic systems straight into the lake like we once did when I was growing up. I mean, there's a lot of practices. We're putting buffer zones between our lawns and the lakes. It isn't mowed straight all the way down to the body of water. We're not using fertilizers on those lawns that are right in front of the lakes. All those things have helped us clean up our systems. Now, when we talk about invasive species in particular, I'm with Jason. I think we're seeing weed beds come a lot deeper. I think that the fish are relating to weeds more than in the past. That's one general trend I think I've seen. And because I think it's partially because the weed haven't started to grow deeper, and subsequently they're more active. I've also seen, just Leech Lake is a prime example where the bite used to be more of a red lake bite. It was more of a dirty water daytime bite. Now we're seeing it this very distinct early morning, late evening, even after dark crankbait trolling on rocky points that we never used to have before. That fishing just didn't exist. Now, is that invasive species or is that cleaner water? Well, I don't know that. I think that on that part of it is like the Great Lakes, which I spend a fair amount of time on the Bay of Green Bay. It's infested with all sorts of invasive species. The water is so clear on the Bay of Green Bay that if you could be fishing a very steep point and be casting up on casting somewhat shallow, but the point is, if it's a calm day, you can look down on the bottom and you can see the tip of a walleye's tail in 30 plus feet of water. And I am not joking. If you've ever been there, it's one of the most amazing things you've ever seen. Is to look down, it's like looking at an aquarium. There's a walleye swimming, and it's an 8, 9, 10 pound walleye, and you can see the fins of that walleye. That fishery is also one of the most fun walleye fisheries that I get to fish every single year, because it is probably the most reactive walleyes of anywhere we get to fish. So we've changed systems from open water trolling with spinners and crankbaits on those bodies of water to casting specific pieces of structure with baits that move incredibly fast. So you're casting puppet minnows and jigging wraps and all these ripping style baits and big rattle baits, and you're casting them and ripping them and casting them and ripping them, and you're using big tubes and big plastics and casting and cranking and getting things to zig and zag, because it's the erratic action of forcing a fish to react to whatever you're moving down there. So get it down in front of them and make it move fast, make the fish make a decision, and it becomes much more of a boxing, I don't know, it's kind of a duo that you never really had before. And that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, but it's Green Bay.
It's Green Bay. but where did that system start? It started right here with some guys in Lake Bemidji. Where did that all start? That whole style of fishing started on Lake Bemidji is the best I can track it down. And that evolved, went from here out to Green Bay, and now it's one of the most effective neatest ways to watch people catch fish. And if you've ever done it, casting for walleyes with big baits like that, I'm telling you, these things, forget about this, "Oh, I think I got a bite and let the line out." I mean, they hit it, they about rip the rod out of your hand. It's one of the most exciting, thrilling ways to get a fish to bite. If you've ever done it, it's all you'll want to do. It's really, really fun.
Some of these other techniques that we've talked about too play into the zebra mussels and the different styles of fishing now. I mean, in the old days, we used to drive over the fish. You know, you're not using side imaging, you're using, down viewing or sonar. So you're driving along the break, you're driving over the fish, and sometimes you can only do that once now in the clear water and you'll spook them. So you're using side imaging to spot fish out away from the boat. Then you're using the spot lock on your trolling motor to hold yourself away from those fish and casting into them, or you're using, your talon to hold you on a spot where you're here and the fish are here. And you're not, a live bait rig. You're let it off the side of the boat and you drive over the fish. You can't drive over fish the same way you used to. So a lot of people, when they're doing the same thing that they've always done, you might get one or two passes out of it, and then the fish are gone. They've spooked. They've left. So I mean, it's different styles, and you really got to, if you're going to fish in this new age, drifting and trolling with it out, you have to get away from the boat. So casting is almost unavoidable. So learn how to cast again, and try to fish away from the boat, not right under the boat. It makes a big difference. But again, with the talons, a lot of times, if you set those up on rocks and you got a little bit of wave, so it's making the scratching sound on the bottom, geez, the perch like that. They'll come right under your boat. So, sometimes I guess it works other ways too. But I find with a lot of kids too.
Would you have one or two talons?
I only have one, but you got two, and I understand the concept.
Because if you throw out a bobber, you can only spin once and you're a mess. And having one talon is awesome, but having two is twice as good.
Two costs twice as much.
But you have to do it.
All right, we're running out of time, so we're going to do one more thing. We'll start with Bro, work our way in. Your favorite fish to catch, and then just some final thoughts here.
Well, I'm a professional walleye guy, but my favorite fish are big bluegills. I love catching big bluegills. It's a fleeting resource, and I think everybody in this room just about knows where they can catch a big bluegill. But there's not as many places as there used to be. But I've chased big bluegills ever since I could ever remember, and they got heart. They fight really good, and I'm not chasing the little tiny ones. I want to catch the biggest one I've ever seen, any chance I can catch. And they're fun. They're very saltwater. They're colorful. They're easy to catch, and at times you can't catch them. They'll just blow your hook away under the ice, and that's a resource that I hope is around for these young kids in the audience, because we'll always have little bluegills, but we'll have big ones. So I don't keep any that touch 9 inches and up. And if a little kid wants to mount one, yeah, but we got to throw the big ones back, or the whole lake will stunt.
For me, it's probably walleyes for sure still, and with smallmouth becoming a close second. I've kind of fallen in love with catching those things. But for me, the walleyes, it's all about the challenge, and and how things adapt and change over time, and you have to adapt. You can't just drag a rig with a leech around all year and expect to catch fish. And to me, and what Chip was saying about Green Bay, it's once you figure out how to catch walleyes using reaction style baits, you will buy far less live baits, and you'll have far much more fun. And they're predators. They are predators, and they will attack like a predator. And once you learn how to fish for walleyes, and just getting the confidence in doing it, and just catching a few fish doing it, and it's amazing. It truly is. So whether it's crankbaits, jigging wraps, puppet minnows, spoons, whatever it is, try it and get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and the reward is pretty awesome.
I guide for all species, but I've got a soft spot for crappies. I like to eat them. They're the least parasitized of all the fish. They're clean. They're eating insects and zooplankton and mush a lot of the time. So I like to eat them, and I get a big kick out of catching big crappies.
I like fishing for just about everything. I follow the seasons. I'll start with panfish, I go to walleyes, and I really get hung up on smallmouth and largemouth bass. I love them, but I make sure I get a couple of days of musky fishing and pike fishing in there. And all the way down to, on Monday this week, I was cutthroat trout fishing. That was my Monday. But part of what I love about fishing is mixing up all the species, because I think I learned something from one species to the next that I can apply, and just outwitting those little buggers.
My favorite fish to catch is yes. I chase everything that swims, and it's important to understand that every fish has a place in a fishery. Some that I've really become fond of over the years, just like free smallies. Man, I love fishing smallmouth. But there's something about having a giant muskie come and just chow a bait right next to the boat. One I've also gotten real fond of in the last several years, eel pout. I knew people would go, what in the world? They're actually doing a study on eel pout right now on Bad Medicine Lake. They put in 60 transmitters to track where these fish are moving, and the transmitters there's 6 receivers out on the lake, and some of those receivers will send their whereabouts every 6 minutes, some of them every 10 minutes, and they'll last for about 14 months. And people say, why in the world would they study eel pout? Why? Well, one main reason, there's hardly any studies that have been done on it, and there's a lot to learn about. And they are fun fish to catch.
Jason Durham, Chip Lear, Paul Nelson, Jason Freed, Bro Rosedal, ladies and gentlemen. I have the microphone, so I can hold you captive. So I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion. It's not selfless promotion, shameless self-promotion. I do Fishing Paul Biting Cover. Many of you listen to it. If you haven't, there's something wrong with you. It's a wonderful show. And it's mainly because I talk to people like this every single day. We're going to kick it off 2 weeks before the opener, so I think it's like first Monday in May the show will begin. It's on KB 101 FM and KBUN FM, and Paul Bunyan Country Outdoors has a Facebook page. Like the page, and then you'll get links to the podcast every time we do a new episode, so you can just listen to it online as well. So hope you'll do that. The numbers of the prizes, the tickets are being posted over there at the prize table. You can come and claim a prize. Everybody's going to be at their tables for another about 25 minutes or so check them out. Hang around till just before 9. We got more prizes we're going to give away. We got the 3 gift cards we're going to give away. Jason's got some prizes from his table he's going to give away, and I'm going to give away my t-shirts. So that'll be right before 9 o'clock. So say hi to everybody.